You're listening to Systemic, a podcast about race. I'm Dan Kimbrough, your host, a content creator, educator, diversity and inclusion advocate, and father. Each episode, we will explore a new aspect of race and racism in America, the aim to educate and explain the intertwining of race as a systemic part of American culture. We hope each episode enlightens and drives you to work towards an anti-racist future. So in 1961, Langston Hughes, James Baldwin, Lorraine Hainsbury, and two publishers, Kinch and Kopitsky, I believe, sit down to do an interview. The interview is discussing what it means to be a Negro in America, specifically looking at writing and art, but really about what it means to be a Negro in America overall. And James Baldwin had written a review of Langston's work, and that was part of what the discussion kicks off talking about. And in this review, in this response, is where we get the quote from James Baldwin: to be Negro in America and relatively conscious is to be in a state of rage all the time. But it's not the whole quote that we ever hear. Here's the actual whole quote.
Well, the first difficulty is really so simple that it's usually overlooked. To be a Negro in this country and to be relatively conscious is to be in a state of rage almost all of the time. And in one's work, and the part of the rage is this: it isn't only what is happening to you, but it's what's happening all around you and all of the time in the face of the most extraordinary and criminal indifference, the indifference of most white people in this country and their ignorance. Now, since this is so, it's a great temptation to simplify the issues under the illusion that if you simplify them enough, people will recognize them. Mm-hmm. I think this illusion is very dangerous because, in fact, it isn't the way it works. A complex thing can't be made simple. You simply have to try to deal with it in all its complexity and hope to get that complexity across.
What I love about this quote is that he's spot on. Complex things can't be made simple. Racism can't be simplified. This notion that if we dumb down racism and we make it simple, people will finally understand it has never worked. Racism is complex. In fact, racism is a system. Racists are individuals, and that in and of itself trips people up in that, well, I'm not racist. Well, sure, you're not racist, but you are part of a racist system, right? The system of racism exists, and the things that you are doing aid and abet that system. That's why we talk about not just being non-racist, but anti-racist. And so Baldwin, he brings up so many interesting points. One of them is also it's not just being upset that racism exists or that it's happening to you, but it's also what's happening all around you. So that as an individual, it's not that I suffer racism in a vacuum. Racism is happening to me, and it's happening all around me. And in a very real way, it's happening to an ignorant and uncaring white audience. And this is from 1961. We are in 2021, and we're still seeing this as an issue that we're having, is that finally, hopefully, with the events of 2020, that ignorant and uncaring white audience is slowly starting to shift and care more. But the vast majority, that's the problem, is that we've tried to simplify racism to a point in which those who need to be the audience, that need to be a part of this discussion about how we end racism, it's been so simplified, they don't care. They feel as if we do this, this, and this, racism will be gone. And that's not the case. And so we have to understand that most people are complicit. You're a part of a racist system. And that is the problem. It has been for a very long time. What happens to Black America, for the most part, is irrelevant to white America because they're unaffected and they're ignorant to what's going on inside of this shared country of ours. And so that if we are to fix these issues, we have to view racism as a white issue, not a Black issue, because we have to understand that race was thrust upon black people, and we'll discuss this in a later episode, but that the system of racism in and of itself is not a problem or a creation of black people. This is what comes from white people in this country from the beginning. And so we have a racist system that allows people to believe that they aren't racist and that they aren't the issue. And because they have a black friend or black family members or black coworkers or even a black lover, they are not racist. Okay, you may not be racist, but you may still be complicit in a racist system. And so we have to really sort of break this down. And that when racist issues occur in America, and until, again, very recently, most of America has fallen silent, there isn't an acknowledgement that these things happened because of race. They happened because that person did this, or they weren't going along with the flow, or they didn't do what they were told, or blah, blah, blah. No, they happened because of race, because the system itself is in fact racist. And so we have to move to this point of being anti-racist. We have to learn how to respond in that manner. And so, again, race in America is not a black issue. It's not one that we have created, which means that it's not one that we alone can solve. Your complicity in racism happens whether or not you like it. If you are white and you choose to be ignorant to race issues and a racist system, you are a part of a racist system, and you are complicit in racism. And that's just by being ignorant and not doing anything. Now, there are people who are overtly racist, and that's an entirely different thing. But by not being anti-racist, by not working towards anti-racism, you are complicit in a racist system. And that's harsh. And I don't really care that it's harsh, because it's time that we deal with the complexity of racism and stop trying to make it simple for those who don't want to or can't understand it. It is a complex issue. There are numerous things that have to be done to move this country to a point of anti-racism, to move this country beyond it. And the blind ignorance of a lot of white Americans will continue to perpetuate this racist system. And so conversations have to happen. Conversations like what happened with Baldwin and Hansberry and Hughes, and talking about what it means to be black in America, but also conversations about what it means to be white in America, because America is a country full of different ethnicities and different groups. And to learn to live together is to learn to understand where the issues are and to understand the history of this country so that we don't relive these things. Because if we don't, we're going to continue to have Tamir Rice's and Alden Sterling's and Breonna Taylor's and George Floyd situations happen. And as a black man continuously seeing these things, I'm in a state of rage all of the time because of racism in America, because it's not just happening to me, it's happening to others. And I have to witness happening, and then I have to continuously have conversations in which people choose to deny that is a systematic issue. And so we have to accept that America is racist, that the American system, the government, how it's put together, how we function as a whole is based on racism. And the only way we can dismantle this is to dismantle the ignorance of white America. And so I'm hoping that with this podcast, we can go down these little rabbit holes and take a journey where we explore the complexity of racism in America, and that through that, we can exit this state of rage, that we can find ways of working together to move forward, because to consistently be in a state of rage is almost too much to bear. Systemic is a production of Park Multimedia. Thank you for taking the time to listen, and remember, to solve any problem, you have to first acknowledge that it exists.